I think Rudy Gobert is an elite defensive player. I think he's the best defensive player in the NBA, and I think that's where the lid is on his talent. I don't think Rudy Gobert is an elite NBA center. I think he is an elite NBA center defender. And I think Rudy Gobert tends to limit the upward potential of the Utah Jazz. I think that Zach Lowe at ESPN, their NBA senior writer, makes a really compelling case for this when he released his 3-team NBA rankings, and Rudy Gobert is third-team center for Zach Lowe's NBA all NBA teams.
Yeah.
Agree, disagree? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, so here's how it breaks down, just to give you guys perspective if you haven't seen this. First team is Jokic, second team is Embiid, and then like you were just saying, third team is Gobert. And I have to tell you, I agree with it. I think, when you're putting together all NBA teams or when you're evaluating a player, we don't just evaluate the defensive side of the ball. Like we evaluate the entire package that you bring to the table. So right. When I look at this, I say, okay, well, it's a pretty clear-cut reason why Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid are ahead of Rudy Gobert. And that's simply because those two guys are capable of giving you 40 points a night and giving you the 20 boards. And Jokic specifically has shown an ability over the course of the season after Jamal Murray goes down with the ACL to distribute and really kind of lead this team in that way. And I think that the flexibility, the ability to be pliable as a player, I think is a huge conversation. And I think Rudy Gobert has a lot of opportunity to grow with that. I think Rudy set like one of Rudy's greatest strengths, not just defensively but offensively, is the way he sets picks. He has found a way to pretty much set a moving screen every time he sets a screen and get away with it. And I'm not saying that's cheating. I'm saying if they're not blowing the whistle, go ahead and do it. And I love it. But I think where he falls short is, hey, he's not a great passer. Sometimes on certain nights, not every night, but certain nights, he really struggles to catch the ball.
Yeah.
So that limits how much you can feed him. And then lastly, obviously, as we've talked about on the show at length, he doesn't have a jumper or any kind of like back to the basket game, and that's why he's 13.
He doesn't finish anywhere that's not a dunk, and even I hesitate to say within 2 feet of the basket because he can't. His layups are even awkward. I mean, if you watch Rudy Gobert, try to get the ball up to the rim, if he's not dunking it, there's a question. It will never be just all bottom of the net. It's always rattle around. If he uses glass, it's a real question whether it goes in or not. Rudy Gobert's limitations will be the limitations of the Utah Jazz because we know the top end of Bojan Bogdanovic. We know the top end of a guy like a Joe Ingles.
Yeah.
We know that you can count on Donovan Mitchell. We know what Mike Conley is. I think you don't know what Rudy can do offensively because we've never seen him do anything offensively.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody points to these videos of Rudy Gobert shooting jumpers and threes, and that's great and that's cool and all that he's doing that. He doesn't do that for the Jazz. And his offensive game has really not evolved past, hey, throw me a lob, I'll dunk it. Let me get a rebound and dunk it. It's very rare that you see him get a high post, hey, let me put my back to the basket, because there's no win there.
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert's best offensive ability is pick and roll, and they don't use him in the roll. So you're starting to see when the Jazz pick and roll, teams are attacking the ball handler now because you don't have to worry about Rudy. You can block that lob with backside help. That limitation is what's going to limit the Jazz. Where Rudy goes offensively is probably where this Jazz team goes, which, not to keep picking the scab off an old wound, you don't pay a guy, what is it, 205?
205.
You don't pay a guy $205 million to be a limitation.
Yeah.
That's my biggest issue with Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't want to see, and I'm sure I know we're getting a lot of comments already, and I'm sure there's a few comments in there saying, well, you guys never say anything nice about Rudy. Like, I need you guys to understand that this conversation is about all NBA teams, okay? This is not a, hey, what's great about Rudy Gobert? We know what's great about Rudy Gobert, which is, hey, he's a great defender. He is an intimidating presence in the middle, But then on the other side of the ball, this is not just, hey, who's the best defender in the league? Yes, he should win Defensive Player of the Year. Absolutely. He's a great defender. That's the plus side. But again, when we're talking about winning championships and we're talking about the legacy of potentially one of the best players this organization has ever had in Donovan Mitchell, we have to talk about the fact that Rudy Gobert limits them offensively. I've said it probably, I don't know how many times, I can't count, but I've said it a number of times that the Utah Jazz play 4-on-5 on offense. They play 4-on-5 on offense. And what I mean is Rudy Gobert is not a threat offensively to the defense. So you've got Joel Embiid in the pick and roll, guarding the ball handler, forcing the ball handler to feed it to Rudy in the lob, and then he's still able to get back and block Rudy's shot. That should tell you everything you need to know about Rudy Gobert's game.
Yeah, and the question is, how do the Jazz leverage that? And how they're going to leverage that is you're going to have to move the basketball. Because when you're in pick and roll, let's say it's Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and again, everybody yesterday freaked out that we said he may not be ready for game one. That's not us saying that.
No, that's the media saying that. That's the guys that cover the team.
There's people around the NBA talking about the fact that, Donovan may not be ready for game one, but here nor there. My point is I look at what the Jazz will do. If it's Don and Rudy in the pick and roll, Rudy's going to come up, set that screen. Donovan's going to get attacked, and I think he's going to have to quickly move the ball. Ideally, you'd like to throw it to Rudy, and he will, either finish or throw that ball to the corner. Because anything that's an open look for three on this team is a win, but he's not the best passer in the world. I'm not saying Rudy doesn't pass or that he's a bad passer. I'm just telling you, against a team like the Lakers, I don't see how Rudy Gobert is able to pass out of that pick and roll. That's why you don't see the tandem, the second guy in the pick and roll, give him the ball very often, unless it's a drive to the basket and lob for a dunk. What other option do you have to give Rudy Gobert the ball in a high pick and roll?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of upside potential, as they call it, for
With
Rudy.
Very little downside risk.
Yes, correct.
Wolf of Wall
yes.
Street. Right?
There's a lot of potential there with him passing in the corner, because I think, and if you watch Jazz games, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here, which is when they kick to the corner and they swing the ball and they move it around the arc, they almost always find an open look. And I think that as a team, from a team perspective, that's where the inconsistency kind of comes in, and that's where not having Don and Mike has really been interesting, because without Don and Mike, there's been a lot more ball movement, because they've been forced to say, okay, we got to create open looks because we don't have guys who are athletic enough on their own to just go and find
That's
it. And that's why I say when they come back and in the postseason, they need to find that ball movement against teams like the Lakers.
But I'll also say I think the guy who's suffered the most without Don and Mike is Joe Ingles. Mm-hmm. Because I still maintain that, yes, I get it. Donovan Mitchell is your most important player. I totally understand that. I think Joe Ingles has to be making threes. When Joe Ingles makes threes for this Jazz team, it's a completely different dynamic offensively. It creates a lot of scramble for the opposition. And when he makes those threes, and if that ball is kicked to the corner and Joe Ingles is standing in the corner, that ball's going in.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I know I've said this 1,001 times. The Jazz have got to find a way to get Joe Ingles back and rolling.
Yeah.
I think he's that important. And I think once he is not starting, I think he becomes a much better player. Because his role, he and I don't know what made them do it, but when they moved him to that guy off the bench, I think he became a better player.
Right.
And I'm not saying that Joe Ingles is old, and I know we have a lot of people in Australia that listen to the show. I'm not ripping Joe Ingles. He's just a better player off the bench for the Jazz.
Yeah, I think you don't have to call him old to say that age definitely, starts to play a factor. I think, as a head coach, Quinn Snyder's job is to look at each player and say, hey, based on your skill set and where you are as a player, how can I get the most efficient minutes out of you? And I think there's some serious credence to, that I love the bench mob idea of Ingles, Clarkson, and Favors. Those three guys coming off the bench.
What about George Niang?
The minivan has been starting.
Man, don't you disrespect the Yugo.
Okay, fuck you.
Yeah.
Ah. The Yugo. Come on, the Yugo.
The Yugo.
Nothing? Okay. Anyway, Mick wants to know, where do you guys rank Don and Rudy in the MVP conversation? I don't, and this is probably going to piss some people off too. How do you put Rudy Gobert in the MVP conversation? Because right now, my top 5 in the MVP, I think Nikola Jokic wins it.
Yeah.
I think Steph Curry deserves to be the second nod there. And then there's everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't think there's even a close, and I know Suns fans have been tweeting at me a lot lately about, hey, why aren't you putting CP3 in the MVP conversation? Because if you look at the case for Nikola Jokic and you look at the case for Steph Curry, and if you want to just argue merits, Steph Curry's got a much better case than Nikola Jokic. The numbers don't say that. The sentiment, the momentum around the NBA doesn't say that. I think Steph Curry's got as strong a case as anybody to be the NBA MVP. Make me the case that Rudy Gobert is more integral to this Jazz team than Steph is to his team. Make me the case that with Donovan Mitchell, he's out of the lineup. His team still finishes number 1 in the NBA. That's not the ingredients for an MVP, right?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, he missed a bunch of games. That's not the ingredients for an MVP. Why is Steph Curry now being talked about as an MVP? Well, because he played most of the season and he was a dominant player. I look at Nikola Jokic. I think he's twice the player that Rudy Gobert is. And B, I think without Jamal Murray, who was the lifeblood of that team, energy and spirit-wise, Nikola Jokic still managed to put up, just engorged numbers, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think he's the engine that makes that team go.
Yeah.
So I think he makes MPJ a better player. I think even without all of their guards that were out, they still found a way to hang on to a top 5 spot in the Western Conference, and I think that's really significant.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, with Steph, you're talking about a guy who's had to play with G League players this year, man. I mean, at one point they had so many injuries that they were literally bringing guys up from the G League. So that's why I say I know that Jazz fans really want Rudy and Don to be in the MVP conversation, but the fact is that the Jazz without Don went I think 11 or 12 or 13-5, like something like that. So you're still a dominant team without him, and you look at
and that's not saying they didn't miss him.
No, of course they missed him. Yeah, I mean any team would. But what I'm saying is that when you look at the MVP conversation, sit Steph down and see what happens to the Warriors. Nothing good. You sit.
Their season's over.
Yeah, I mean they're not doing anything.
Their season's over.
Yeah, so it's literally taken Steph winning a scoring title for them to be in the postseason. I mean that should give you enough perspective to say, okay, he's done some special things.
Yep, totally agree. James Jensen, good morning to you, says put Rudy on any team and they will be the best offensively. Well, that's all well and good, but what's that do for you offensively? And I know I say this all the time, but James and any other Jazz fan, you just explained to me in the last 5 minutes. You're down, especially if you're trailing. If the Jazz are losing in the last 5 minutes, Rudy Gobert has almost no value.
Yeah.
Almost none. If you're leading by between a bucket and 6, 7, 8 points, okay, now you can leave him there because he can lock you defensively. He can really help you defensively. But if that team shoots a lot of threes, what's Rudy Gobert's best offense? Well, making sure that he's the only one getting rebounds.
Yeah.
So he's really limited, especially in end half, end quarter, end game situations. He's really limited. Now, heavens to Betsy, what if, and I know this is crazy, what if the other center's Nikola Jokic? What if the other center is Joel Embiid? What if you're playing a guy like a Mikal Bridges at center? Now what happens when you have an athletic big who can shoot threes? Now Rudy Gobert's away from the basket. What if you are a Ivica Zubac and they're double switching you into Patrick Beverley versus Rudy Gobert in the corner against the Clippers? Now what?
Yeah.
Now you're not the best defensive team in the NBA. Now you're not the best defensive player in the NBA. And the Jazz have not found against elite teams, because if you look at what Portland did to Rudy Gobert, if you look at what teams typically do, they switch Rudy into odd matchups, and then what's Quinn's reaction? Well, let me bring in Derek Favors. Let me Take Rudy out. It's load management. We're playing him fewer minutes. Or is it a non-matchup? Right? You look at the way Quinn has had to massage their lineups, and nobody asks about it, and nobody talks about it. A lot of Rudy's minutes and where and when he plays is based on who the other team is. And if you are Joel Embiid, that's not an issue. If you're Nikola Jokic, that's not an issue. And again, I look at the trend of power forwards playing center. Look at Anthony Davis. If you are Rudy Gobert, and now obviously things have changed a little bit with Andre Drummond being a Laker.
Yeah.
How does Rudy Gobert match up against the Lakers?
He's definitely not playing Anthony Davis.
Definitely not.
I mean, they'll meet at the rim many times, of course, but he's not going to be one-on-one with Anthony Davis. I don't think. I mean, I would assume the Lakers would start AD and Drummond if they were playing the Jazz. So, to me, if you're the Jazz, you're playing that matchup zone, and you're saying to Rudy, hey, you're just basically guarding the paint. That's what you're doing.
Ace says, usually this is where I would be attacking you guys for hating on the Jazz as usual, but I have to say I agree with you. I've seen it more and more, and it's your fault, but Rudy is a liability in late game situations. He is. And again, if you think we're hating on Rudy, or if you think we're hating on the Jazz, tell us how that's not the case. Tell us how Rudy Gobert is a positive offensive force in the last 5 minutes of a very close game. Because I'm telling you, I don't think he is. And this is why I ask, what would this team be like if you had added more scoring at the deadline or in free agency or in buyout season?
We wouldn't be talking about Rudy.
Well, you wouldn't be, because
you wouldn't have to worry about it.
It would not be an issue. And that's why I say the Utah Jazz are very good. They're not one of the elite teams in the NBA when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm wrong, because, man, nobody wants a championship for Jazz fans more than I do.
Yeah.
But I just don't see that in the making. And there were a bunch of comments, and I meant to do this. We should read some of the YouTube comments about yesterday's show. We don't, how do we say, post-show, we don't read a whole lot of comments. We get an avalanche of comments just on yesterday's show.
Yeah.
Like I look at Blue Rice Inc. Who said Mitchell wouldn't be available for the first round? A lot of people are wondering, because it's not been cemented that he would be.
Yeah.
John says championship or bust? No. The bookmakers generally have it right, so a series loss to any team who isn't the Lakers, Clippers, or Nets would be highly disappointing. But the reality is the Jazz most likely lose to the Lakers, Clippers, or Nets.
Agreed.
Okay, so
I agree.
So because they're gonna lose, it's not championship or bust, right?
Yeah, I mean, look. So I think if you're in the organization, like if you're Donovan Mitchell or if you're Quinn Snyder or anybody in the organization, yeah, your goal is to win a championship. I think if the perspective that we're talking about is from a Jazz fan, which I think this comment is. I think I love to hear that people are being realistic about what this team can do against the elite teams in the league. And that's why, I think when you go up against the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nets, if you're seeing the Nets, you're in the NBA Finals. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, this has been a disappointing season if you get to the finals and you lose to the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not saying that. I think you had a hell of a run, and I think you just ran into a better team. But I think, when you're going to see one of these good teams in the West. You're not avoiding the Nuggets, Clippers, and Lakers. So
yep. Zach Gibson on YouTube says if the Jazz want to be the best, they will beat the best.
I agree.
Doesn't matter who you play in the first round, they need to win. Period. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Bernadette Diaz says, in a fan view, I want them to reach the finals, but reality is a Western Conference Finals is good enough. See, I just don't think it is. And I bring these comments up because expectations for this team, I'm telling you, start and end with Rudy Gobert's ability. If Rudy Gobert is going to contribute offensively, they're going to win an NBA championship. That just is what it is. This team, in my opinion, is an elite defensive team. They're on par with the Lakers defensively.
Yeah.
The problem is you have a lot of offensive liabilities right now. If you ask yourself this, okay, if we take Rudy out, who are our other liabilities offensively? Well, certainly Royce O'Neal, right? Royce O'Neal's a guy that doesn't give you much offensively.
Yeah. Yep.
If his three ball doesn't go in, he's not scoring at all, and that's why he's a sub. He'll score 3 to 6 points a night. Period. Okay, so now those are two starters, right? You're not expecting much out of Rudy Gobert offensively or Royce O'Neal.
But at least with Rudy, you're getting like 15 points just by how he plays.
But now you're down to 3 guys.
Yeah.
Right? So now you have to ask yourself, how much do you count on Mike Conley? Because there's not a backup point guard on this team. There's nothing.
You wouldn't call Jordan Clarkson backup?
I would not. I would call Jordan. Well, but why are
the way
they
he
starting?
I know. The way he plays is he's not a facilitator. He's a scorer for sure. I'm just saying.
Again, my question is, who's behind Mike Conley?
Yeah, I mean, look, the guys that are going to either win or lose them a championship. Obviously, it goes without saying. Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley are each going to have 25 plus a night for them to be in these games and potentially winning these games. Then I look at Jordan Clarkson. I don't want Jordan Clarkson scoring 40 in the postseason. That means that they've lost. I want him scoring 25 to 30, and that's right where you want to be.
Yeah.
So right there, you're 60, 70 points, right, between just those 3 guys. So that's nice. Now the question is, what does Bogdanovich bring, and how do they get him to be a 30-point-a-night guy in the postseason?
Well, but you need to say what it is. Right there, you're relying very heavily on Bojan Bogdanovich to win you games.
Yeah.
And when you have 3 guys, maybe 4, and this is why I say you have to get Joe Ingles rolling again because he's an invaluable piece. And if you look at the best teams in the NBA, you've got to get James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving playing together, rolling. You've got to get LeBron, AD. You've got to get those 2 playing with Drummond.
Yeah.
You've got to get them playing with KCP, with Schroeder. They need time together, right? Well, now you're out of time, but guess what? I know what LeBron can do. I know what AD can do. I know essentially that Andre Drummond's going to give me between 15 and 20 boards every single night because they're just going to turn that dog loose, and that's what he does.
You know what I'm so impressed with Drummond, though? Seriously. It's not like when you go to the Lakers, there's expectations.
Yes.
Not expectations in the sense that, hey, you're going to compete with AD or something like that. It's not like that. The expectation, though, I feel like was, hey, dude, you got to come in here and you got to rebound the hell out of the ball. And he's not only done that, he's turned himself into somebody who oftentimes like really enjoys the physical battle and is sort of like almost like a bruiser for them, like he's going to physically have no problem battling Rudy Gobert on the boards. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to dominate Rudy, but what I am saying is that he's going to make Rudy work really hard to get boards. And I think that those little intangible pieces are also invaluable in the postseason because think about the Clipper game at the end of the Clipper game, earlier in the year. You put that shot up and Rudy's trying to go for that board. Kawhi comes down with it. The game's over.
Yeah.
Those kind of moments and situations in the postseason are what are going to decide the fate of this team. And so when we talk about the trade deadline or the lack of activity, we talk about the matchups. That's where the second-tier player like Drummond or Mike James or any of these guys that we've talked about, that's where they come in. Because the Jazz didn't add any of those guys, and they're only relying, again, on these like 4 or 5 players to win them.
But I point to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, we added a bunch of pieces. But how many of those pieces are performing?
A good bit.
Look at Ben McLemore.
Yeah. Guys, yeah.
Your job is to hit threes.
Yeah.
So what is he doing? He comes in and he hits threes. Dre, your job is to come in and rebound. So what's he doing? He's giving you 15, 20 boards a night. I look at their additions. Even Wesley Matthews the other night gives them a critical offensive rebounding move.
That's the first time I've ever seen him do anything for them. I mean, he's been awful for them.
But in critical situations, the Lakers, you just understand that you're on the Lakers.
Yeah.
And there's an expectation that you're going to perform. I look at Rudy in the Phoenix game. Look at that rebound he didn't get.
Uh-huh.
Or that was a Golden State game, excuse me. Look at the rebound he doesn't get.
Mm-hmm. And then
it winds up.
Yeah.
What happened? It winds up in Steph's hands at the end of all of it, right?
Yeah.
It gets tipped out to Dre, who makes the perfect pass to Steph, who got Royce O'Neal to fall asleep. Steph hits a game-winning three, essentially.
Well, and think about the mental breakdown in against Minnesota, where Rudy leaves the paint. It's those kind of late game situations where you're like, okay,
Yeah.
like we in the postseason, it does kind of make you wonder, like, will they make that kind of mistake? I don't think they will. I think they'll be fine. But I guess at the end of the day, what we're really saying here is that you have a lack of firepower. Because in the postseason, you're not going to put up 53s a night. That's not happening.
Well, everything's closer, tighter. Defense is
the game is slower.
Yeah, you're not running, gunning. This is the Giannis example that we always give about how Giannis is forced to play half court offense, and it makes it a lot more difficult. And when you struggle to shoot threes consistently, when you're asked to do that in big time situations, you tend to grip the ball a little tighter. And we've seen that he's not been able to knock down threes in the postseason. Now, we've never seen Giannis hit threes at this clip in the regular season, so maybe that changes. But this is why I say home court advantage is absolutely critical for this Jazz team because they have the best home court advantage in the NBA. And if you're putting 13,000 fans in the Vivint, you're going to dominate home court advantage-wise. So let's get some comments on YouTube because there's a ton of them. Appreciate you guys being here. Troll King.
Okay, this should be good.
But Gobert is the best option for the Jazz right now. You build around the strength and weakness of your personnel. I think you want that Vucevic type of player for the Jazz. I think you need that Vucevic type player. He's a guy that we don't talk about very often.
You don't need. That's a great example, and I give you a lot of credit for bringing up his name because if they had that would be a totally different dynamic on this team. But Rudy is, twice the defender that Vucevic is.
God.
It's not even close. So like when I look at Rudy's game, I don't even need him to shoot it at the rate that Vucevic does. I need him. Just give me a little push shot in the paint,
just
dude.
Give me something with your back to the one shot that you can rely on with your back to the basket. That's all we need.
Give me a drop step, to your left shoulder and a hook shot with your right hand, rolling to the middle of the paint, like just something little like that. Or I know an alternative would just be more physical offensively. Like get your guy on the block and play bully ball because he does do that sometimes. There are not a lot, but I've seen him do it a couple times, and he has the length to dunk over guys.
I'm telling you that Rudy doesn't want to play physical basketball.
Well, that's not in doubt. He's French, dude.
He does not.
Come on.
Wow, he's French. Okay, so he's a baguette?
No, he's soft is what he is.
He's a croissant.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that Rudy does not want to play physical basketball.
Yeah, which is why he's always complaining to the officials, and he wants all the calls, and that's not how it works in the league.
I would agree with that. Troll King finishes up and says, if you added scoring as opposed to what? Sacrificing defense? No, sir. Well, you're always going to sacrifice defense in this league because if you give up 139, you can score 140.
You honestly think that this team defensively can stop the Brooklyn Nets?
No, I do. Nobody's going to stop the Brooklyn Nets.
No, but I'm being serious.
You better be able to outscore them.
Like I'm not saying you're going to stop them from scoring 110, 120 points. But what I'm saying is that in a game when you're matched up against them, I don't even really care how many points they score. You need to score more points than them. I know that's obvious. But so what I'm saying here is, hey, can you play good enough defense to give yourself a chance to even be in that game? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Braden Christensen says, I really enjoyed your show yesterday. In your show at 6:35, Mark, you referenced Joseph Smith and Jesus Christ. Why do you have to use their names in such a negative way on this show? Okay. Braden.
Bro.
The comment, and I remember it vividly, I said, it doesn't matter if Jesus Christ and Joseph Smith are your point guards.
Yeah.
Are we really using okay. I respect your opinion. I do. I respect your opinion. James Knight says, I think home court advantage could make a significant difference in the playoffs. I would agree with that.
And that's why it was important you got the 1 seed.
James Jensen says, I hear so much about how Coach Q has been so great for the players, but yet he's going to be last in votes. The Jazz are going to the Western Conference Final and or more. I think he gets votes for Coach of the Year, Quinn Snyder, and I think he deserves that. But I think, and I'm trying to be gentle, I think this team is disappointed in recent years. you cannot lose in the first round again. If this team goes through the Western Conference into the finals, I think it's status quo. I think you're bringing everybody back. I think Quinn Snyder's a hero. I think you will have had a very good season. You will have left it disappointed. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
If you're a Jazz fan if you're a fan of the Timbuktu 3-point shooters and they get to the finals and you lose, that's disappointing. I just, at some point, we need to stop talking about the Utah Jazz being elite, and they need to start being elite.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. Giggity says, good morning, guys, 700 today. It would be nice. It would be nice. Last I looked, we were at 698. So, and I will look again. I don't know if you're saying we're at 700. We are at 698 still. Hopefully, we should.
Hit the subscribe button, bro.
We pick up between 10 and 12 subscribers every day usually on this show, so you would think so.
Yeah.
So we'll update you on the PS5 from Uzbekistan later in the show because there's a significant update. Jeremy Bolton says, morning, fellas. Yo. What's up? Tanner Plummer says, Braden, how did they use their names in a negative way? We were not using because I said it, I was not using Joseph Smith and Jesus Christ negatively. Okay, it was sarcasm. It was to prove a point that you could have the best point guards possible and you're still going to lose.
Whatever.
That was the point. Thanks, Bronny. I appreciate you backing me up, bro. Tanner Plummer says, out of curiosity, are you guys LDS? We are not LDS.
No. Great question, though. Appreciate someone asking that. 'Cause I think it's important.
Lewis Selder says, take note, we can do this. You can do this.
Yeah, listen, to be clear,
and will are different.
They're more than talented enough to do it. I just think that the issue is that in the regular season, you don't have to worry about matchups as much as you do in the postseason.
That's right.
Teams have time to prepare for you. They understand what they have to do to stop you. They understand your weaknesses, and I feel like the weaknesses defensively for the Utah Jazz are greater than they are for other teams, and that's where my concern comes in. That's all I'm saying. But hey, look, I do think that they're a good enough defensive team to make a finals run, and I think that thought is shared.
Yeah, I think that there's no question that this team is good enough to make a finals run. It's not even in doubt to me that the Utah Jazz, when they play at their best, they're the best team in the NBA. I save nobody. I think they're when they're at their best, they're on par with the Brooklyn Nets. Certainly, when they're playing their best ball, the problem is Brooklyn's got somebody who's going to score on you. And we could go back to the Mike James conversation, which was a hot topic on the YouTube comments after the show yesterday. I again go back and look at, and somebody was referencing the way he left Chichka Moscow and that fight with the coach. And hey, that's all well and good. You know, and for those of you who don't know, Mike James, the guard of the Brooklyn Nets, was having the best season of his career in Europe. I think he had won 5 of 6 MVP of the Month awards. Like, Mike James was dominating in Europe. He got into an altercation with the head coach at CSKA Moscow and asked to leave the team. And they allowed him to leave the team and go search for an NBA contract. They released him. He came back, and he doesn't have an agent. For those of you who don't know this, Mike James doesn't have an agent. But what he does have is a good friend who happens to be really close friends with Kevin Durant's brother, who also, by the way, happens to be close friends with Mike James.
Yeah.
So what do you think happened? Kevin Durant went to the Nets and said, hey, Mike James is available. We probably ought to sign him. Because if he doesn't sign with us,
he's going to sign with somebody.
The Clippers and the Nuggets are looking to sign Mike James. The Nuggets had made an offer to Mike James. He took less money to go to the Nets to sign a 10-day contract. The Clippers and the Nuggets had offered him guaranteed money the rest of the year.
Yeah.
He went and signed a 10-day contract to play with the Brooklyn Nets, and he's rewarded them. And he signed 2 10-day contracts, and now he's guaranteed the rest of the year. And he's in probably the best position to win an NBA championship. Oh, by the way, the Jazz, by all accounts, never called.
Yeah.
So I just think it's an interesting
thing.
It is. Bolton says Jimmer better than Mike James.
Oh, stop.
Star trolling. Exactly. I just think it's Tanner. Stop. Tanner asks, Karl Malone is Joseph Smith? Question. Stop it, Tanner. Stop it. John Mulvaney says John Stockton is Jesus Christ. Look.
God bless.
Maybe. I don't know. John
rack attack.
John is a saint. No, that's Bill Gates, the rack attack.
Oh, boy.
We'll talk about that too. Look, you guys, it was said in jest.
Here's the deal.
I meant no offense to anybody, right? That's what I'm saying. Forgotten Soul says, I think we are higher on quality start from a championship.
What?
I think we are one higher quality star from a championship.
Oh, he's saying we're one star away from being a championship
Sorry, I have
contender.
like Yelp reviews in my head. You're only 4 stars and you want to be 5? I would agree. You are one stud away from a championship. I agree with that. If we go to the finals, we might be able to attract some free agents. Then again, it's Utah, so probably not.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Illick Gannick says Mike James greater than Jordan Clarkson. Well, that depends on what you want. Jordan Clarkson's a better scorer than Mike James. But Mike James is superior in everything else. His finishing ability, his handle, his facilitation, his lob off the backboard to superstars like Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Mike James is a complete point guard. And my guess is he's going to sign a multi-year extension with Brooklyn. I'd be real surprised if he didn't have a full-time ride in the NBA next year. I'd be really surprised about that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. John Mulvaney says, get Cameron Payne in the offseason. I don't know about that. Jeffrey Epstein talk? No, John Mulvaney, not Jeffrey Epstein talk. Giggity says, wasn't Joseph Smith a known con man back in his day? No, he was not a known. Was he murdered? Yes. He was not a con man. Jeremy Bolton says, dude, we get it. D Wade now. We got D Wade now. You do. I think again, I won't use Joseph Smith or Jesus Christ. Okay.
What?
You could have,
Tony Montana.
No, I'm not going to keep doing it. I'm not. You could have the greatest recruiter ever, and I don't think some guys just have it in their head that Utah's not a place they want to play ball.
Right.
So, and I think you just have to realize that. I don't know. Anyway, Ace says, why do you guys seemingly always say bad things about Jordan Clarkson? The guy just scores. Well, I don't know that we say bad things. I think you have to recognize that Jordan Clarkson is an elite scorer. There's no doubt. He is hot and cold. He is.
There's a balance that he needs to find, and he's always trying
I would agree.
to find, which is if you're a 6-man, you're a Jordan Clarkson, a Lou Williams,
Yes.
that kind of guy in the league. There's a balance that you need to find, which is, yes, you need to come in and you need to get buckets. No doubt. That's your job. But at the same time, you cannot come in and let's say that you're having a bad shooting night. Everybody goes through it. You can't come in, go 1 of 7 in 15 minutes, let's say, and turn it over 3 times. That kills the momentum of the team. That can't happen. And so what happens is when everything's going great with Jordan Clarkson, awesome. He's 25 to 30 a night. He's had some 40-point-a-night performances in which they don't win the game. And why is that? Because 40 points out of Jordan Clarkson means that you're way behind and he's getting too many minutes. That's the problem. So that's why
I would agree with that.
It's not that we're ripping Jordan Clarkson.
Why did he score 41 against Golden State and they lost?
Yeah, like it's not that we don't like Jordan Clarkson. It's that once again, whether we're talking about Jordan Clarkson, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, any of these guys, they have a role and they have limits to how much you want them to produce to get the ideal outcome. And
by the
40
way,
is not it.
And by the way, all of this goes away if Donovan Mitchell's healthy.
Yeah,
It
Clearly,
does.
yeah.
And again, I don't want to get too far away from this. The priority is not Jordan Clarkson scoring 40. It's Bojan Bogdanovic scoring 30.
yeah.
How do you keep that going with Donovan Mitchell, with Mike Conley? And how do you get 15 and 15 out of Rudy Gobert every night in the playoffs? Because that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. And, I think they're just a really good club. They
have quirks.
And they rely on the three ball too much. Mick wants to know, why do you guys write off Quinn for Coach of the Year? Well, because Tom Thibodeau coaches the New York Knicks.
Yeah, and there's a guy named Monty Williams coaching Phoenix.
I think Monty Williams deserves a ton of run in the Coach of the Year. I just think when you put the Knicks back in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the branding that is the Knicks wins him the award.
I just don't know how he loses.
Yeah.
That award. I mean, this is what I say about Nikola Jokic. I don't know how he loses the MVP. Doesn't mean he should win it, but at this point, we're too far down the road I think we're too far down the road to give it to anybody but Tom Thibodeau. That team really saw a turnaround.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's already. I think I think Quinn Snyder's in there. I mean, I'm looking at some of the lists. I look at all these guys. Everybody is voting for Tom Thibodeau. Like Dan Feldman, Tom Thibodeau, Monty Williams, Quinn Snyder.
Yeah.
Kirk Helen, major NBA voice. Tom Thibodeau, Monty Williams, Quinn Snyder.
Yeah.
I look at all of these guys. Everybody's got Tom Thibodeau and Monty Williams 1 and 2.
Think of it this way. The formula to win Coach of the Year is you got to take a bad team to higher places. The Jazz were not a bad team last year.
No.
And they've been the best team in the league this year. So I think, while it's not taking anything away from Quinn, I just think when you're talking about winning individual awards, there's definitely a way to win them. And taking a pretty good team to higher levels is not how you win Coach of the Year.
Yeah, and I think you're going to lose NBA Coach of the Year with the best record in the NBA.
Which you're fine with.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think that if winning percentage decided Coach of the Year, I mean, we would know.
Then, yeah.
But when you look at the obstacles you have to overcome, when you look at the lack of depth on that Knick team, and you look at the production that Tom Thibodeau's gotten out of Julius Randle and Barrett and the way he's brought a lot of those guys up, it's hard to win in basketball games as a head coach of the Knicks. I mean,
yeah.
It really is. And I'm not saying it's easy with the Jazz. I'm certainly not saying it's easy with the Suns.
Right.
The problem for Monty Williams is more people give credit to Chris Paul than they do to Monty Williams. And I think that's why Monty Williams won't win the award. I actually would give it. If I was voting, I think I would probably vote Monty Williams 1, Quinn Snyder 2, Tom Thibodeau 3.
Yeah.
I think Monty Williams deserves to be the Coach of the Year. Like, to have the worst owner in the NBA, arguably, and to take the talent that they've had, that roster is largely the same. Look what he's getting, Monty Williams is getting out of his entire roster top to bottom. They play 86 guys. If you look at Cam Payne on his own,
yeah,
the development that Cameron Payne's had, he was out of the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Devin Booker's mid-range development, I look at DeAndre Ayton offensively. He is evolving. Now, he still can't guard. He can't guard the stanchion, for crying out loud. The guy, he is just not a great defender. But you know what he is now? He's a motor guy. He's an effort guy who will tip the ball up until he gets it from you. Ask Rudy Gobert. Rudy and he battle routinely. I look at Monty Williams and the development that Monty Williams has brought to the Phoenix Suns, and I say to myself, man, Bridges alone.
Yeah.
Bridges' development as a defender.
Yeah.
He's been, and his ability to make the three.
Cam
Johnson's development as more than a situational corner spot up three shooter has been remarkable.
Bro, they bring him in as a firecracker off the bench, man.
Yeah.
They bring him in for a quick 8 to 10 points and then take him out.
And by the way, how much did they miss him when he was hurt the last 2 weeks of this? They really missed him.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I would give it to Monty Williams, but that's just me,
Yeah.
Forgotten Soul says Quinn is stubborn and never adjusts. I would agree with that. This team is who this team is. They're going to shoot as many threes as they can.
Live and die.
And if it goes in, they're going to win. And if it doesn't, they're not going to win.
Yep.
They're not. Because, again, I'll say it's cool that you're an elite defensive team, but this Jazz team does not get that one stop they need when they need it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lakers do. Surprisingly, again, watching Brooklyn the other night, I was surprised that Kyrie Irving actually wants to play defense.
Well, so here's the thing. They're going to be a good defensive team in the postseason. They have the length. They have the size. They just have to kind of get it going on that end of the court. I mean, so often when you throw together the caliber of offensive player that they have in KD, Harden, and Kyrie, I mean those guys are focused on knocking down Jays. But if you can even get not even elite defense, just like marginal defense, just keep teams under 120 a night, you're going to win most of those games.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think. Now, obviously, there's a battle between Monty Williams and Quinn Snyder in the comments.
To the death.
the John Mulvaney says the great things you say about Monty Williams, you can say about Quinn Snyder. But here's the thing. If you look at what Monty Williams has to work with, I mean, Mikal Bridges is a great player, but he's brought him up to 13.5 points a game, and he's a defensive stopper.
Where's the development in... I don't know.
Let me ask, where's the development that you've seen in a guy like DeAndre Ayton offensively? Like his offensive game has grown significantly. DeAndre Ayton is a double-double guy now. Mm-hmm. And when he came out of Arizona, he wasn't double-double nothing.
Right.
Like, I mean, he was struggling. He's turned him into a much better shot blocker now. He's actually over a block a game. Like, I look at that development. I look at their bench guys. I look at Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig might be the best example.
Yeah, nobody knows who Torrey Craig is, yet he's a great player for them.
And he bounced around the league.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, you look at guys like, look at E'Twaun Moore winning them a game the other night.
Yeah.
They didn't play their number ones the other night.
Nope.
Look at E'Twaun Moore. Like, Devin Booker doesn't play.
Bro, that second unit came in with a mission. I mean, they came in with a mission to get the job done.
Because they're ready to play.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I look at what Monty Williams has to work with, and I think it's far less than what Quinn Snyder has to work with. Just your starting five alone, I look at, now obviously you're doing this without Donovan Mitchell, so you deserve credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
But George Niang is a really, really dependable three-point shooter. Right? Now, he doesn't give you anything much outside of that.
Yeah.
He's not great defensively. He will occasionally get to the basket, but George Niang's in the game to do one thing. Mm-hmm. He is in the game to let somebody sag off of him so he's open for three, and he knocks that three down, and he does it really well. But I look at Royce O'Neal. What's Royce O'Neal's development been?
Stop somebody. That's all he's got.
He's not an offensive player.
Dude, dude, if we're going to talk about someone not developing, let's not beat around the damn bush. You want to talk about not developing somebody? Where's the development of a guy named Rudy Gobert's jump shot? Where's that development? Where's the development of the back to the basket game? Where is the development of just simply being able to make layups? Like you want to talk about developing guys. Monty Williams and that staff have developed all those guys that you were just talking about. You want to talk about a guy who's developed? Look at Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson has developed a lot. Like he's come a long way,
massive development
since he first came into the league.
But I look at a couple other things. Okay, so just look at the starting five, the changes in the starting five. Right, obviously Phoenix adds Chris Paul. Their fortunes change. Okay, cool. Rudy Gobert is not developed as an offensive player. Mm-hmm. I look at the inconsistency in Bojan Bogdanovic. This back to the basket thing, this get after it at the rim thing, he's always been that guy. When he got to Utah, he started shooting a lot more threes. And so when he struggled from three, I don't know, was it the red shoes or was it Quinn Snyder that said go to the basket?
Both.
Okay, so let's give him some credit for that. But I look at Joe Ingles. I think Joe Ingles is regressing, not progressing. I look at Royce O'Neal. He is not a guy you can count on offensively. I look at Mike Conley. I think the biggest tip of the cap to to Quinn Snyder on Mike Conley is the management of minutes. It's not Quinn Snyder's fault that Mike Conley won't or can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
Right? I look at Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's grown every year he's been with the Jazz. He's become a better player every year he's been with the Jazz.
He's also a special player, though.
He is. He's a superstar.
He's one of those guys.
But Devin Booker's that guy too. Well, he's not. I get it. He's not a superstar. You guys have all convinced me and told me how stupid I am for slurping Devin and
Whatever.
He's not elite. He's not great. He's not very good at all. Actually, Devin Booker sucks. So I guess he's not. Well, Chris Paul would be a superstar, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, Chris Paul should be in the MVP conversation. So.
Haters. John Mulvaney says Royce O'Neal's a D-leaguer. Mr. Mitch says, wow, finally saying nice things about the Jazz. What happened?
I love that. I love that comment.
I'm just going to move on.
Like, do you even listen to the show, man?
Jeremy Bolton says O'Neal is an elite defender, though. How many elite defenders do you need when you are going to struggle to outscore teams? Because you're going to find yourself, if you're playing under 100 points, you're not going to win. If you're playing under 105 points in the playoffs, I don't think you're going to win. The problem is, if I look at the Lakers are the best defensive team in the NBA, in my opinion. Well, they also happen to score a hell of a lot of points. The Lakers are going to put up 110 points in the playoffs. If they're healthy, if it's AD, LeBron, Dre, Schroeder, they're going to score 110 points in the postseason.
Yeah.
Can you say the same thing about the Jazz? I don't know. What Donovan Mitchell am I getting? I don't know. What is Bogey shooting threes? Is he still going to the basket? Like, what are we getting from Jordan Clark? Like, you have all these questions. If the Lakers are healthy, they're scoring 110 points.
Yeah.
Because if it ain't AD, it's LeBron. If it's not LeBron, it's going to be Schroeder. It's going to be KCP. It's going to be Kuzma. It's going to be more like they've got guys who they know they can count on.
They got guys.
And I would say, who's the offensive zero on the Lakers? Of their top 8 guys, who's the zero? Who's the guy that's not going to contribute at all?
Well, not going to contribute at all. I think Montrezl Harrell is probably on the lower end offensively, but
Do you want me to pull out the stat book?
Go ahead, pull it out, dude. Compare him to other people. He puts up 10 to 15 points a night compared to other guys that's on the lower end.
So
right?
Montrezl Harrell would be your Derek Favors then.
Yes,
right?
Correct.
I'll take Montrezl Harrell over Derek Favors.
Of course, every day of the week, twice on Sunday.
They don't have a guy who's a liability offensively.
Okay, that's a different. Yeah, I understand the point you're trying to make. They're twice as deep as the Jazz are.
Right, but I look at Royce O'Neal.
Yeah.
Oh, he's an elite defender who I can't give the ball to.
Yeah.
Oh, I look at Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year, who I can't give the ball to.
Yeah.
Like, you have multiple guys. You want Trent Forrest shooting a 3 in the playoffs? Because I don't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, are we going to see I think we'll probably see Oni. I don't think we'll see any of Trent Forrest. And if Trent Forrest is playing for the Jazz, I'm telling you, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, you're in trouble at that point.
Yet I can tell you that we're going to see Cantavius, Caldwell Pope, we're going to see Caruso, we're going to see Schroeder.
Kuzma.
Like, you're going to see the depth of the Lakers. By the way, they're so good in the 4-5 that Montrezl Harrell didn't really have minutes the last week of the season.
Yeah.
Think about that. Montrezl Harrell didn't have minutes on the Lakers the last week of the season.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. They're with Andre Drummond, they're really deep now.
Yep.
So that's what I would say. Mulvaney says without CP3, the Suns lose 8 or 9 more games. Well, the problem is they had him. So
I'm guessing that are you trying to make the case for MVP for Chris Paul? Is that
no? There is some. I think. I don't know. This is just me. Casey Finlinson says Royce settles. The D slacks off of him so much. He should use his athleticism and attack the basket, but he settles. Well, and he's got this knee thing that you can clearly see that Royce O'Neal's not the same player now that he was when he was healthy.
Yeah.
But nobody's healthy at this point. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm just saying that both of these coaches, Quinn Snyder and Monty Williams, I think should be 1-2 in the Coach of the Year. I still think Thibodeau wins it. I think he's probably because he's the coach of the Knicks and they're in the playoffs. I think he probably wins it.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't think anybody cares about their win percentage or.
Yeah, come on.
Come on. I think Quinn Snyder and Monty Williams, by the way, on the whole, have done a good job developing guys.
Yeah.
They've done a really nice job developing guys.